But until then, Callie Wright is with Heartland Trans Wellness Center in Cincinnati. And Callie Wright, welcome, I think, for the first time to the Bill Cunningham Show.
It is the first time. Thank you for having me.
Well, Callie, what is the what is the Heartland Trans Wellness Center? What is that?
So basically, it's a place where trans and gender nonconforming folks can come and feel safe. So, there's lots of hostility in the country right now towards folks like us, and it's a space where we can do workshops. It's a space where people can just hang out and play board games. It's a space where the various support organizations in Cincinnati can provide services and facilitate support groups and those kinds of things.
Well, give me a specific. If I'm transgender, which means I'm going from male to female or female to male. Let's face it, all of us begin as females. In the good old days, in the mother's womb, everyone begins as a female. And then certain hormones are released. You go from female all the way over to male. Some people stop kind of halfway in the middle, don't quite get there. So therefore, I think it's one of those things that happen in life. So how does your center help someone understand we all got problems, you got problems, I got problems? How does your center help someone kind of on their journey get to where they want to be?
Well, it's really about social support. The people who struggle the worst are the people who don't get support from their families or their friends or their communities, and that's really where so much of the struggle comes from. So what our role is with the center is providing that community, so people feel like they have a place to go and they have people to talk to, and they have people who understand what they're going through and what they're dealing with.
Okay, is there an epidemic going on? I talk every day on the radio. I don't feel much of this anger and hatred. Of course, I'm not transgender, but is there a lot of this stuff going on around the country where transgender people are being beaten up because of that?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I was looking at numbers the other night, and fully 53% of trans people in a recent study reported being harassed just in bathrooms at some point. A study in D.C. had trans people in D.C. specifically at 70% of some kind of harassment or physical violence. Trans people are at a highly disproportionate risk of physical violence and harassment.
Because? What's the reason?
Hatred, honestly. It's ignorance mixed with fear, mixed with, it being stirred up by, sensationalist media, saying, that we're a threat, that we're out to get your kids, that kind of stuff. So you have people, transgender issues have been, it's been a relatively new conversation in the country, even though we've been around forever. And a lot of times people who have never that they've known of met a trans person, they don't know what it means. And the first thing that they hear is that we're coming into the bathroom to get your kids. So when that stuff gets stirred up, that's kind of the natural result, I think.
Well, let me give you my perspective on transgender bathroom issues that the president and the attorney general brought up, is that I would imagine, I've used a male bathroom my entire life. Every now and then it appears to be a woman in the bathroom. I was at LaGuardia about a month and a half ago, and I got off a flight and went into the men's bathroom. There was a person standing next to me who's about 6'2", appeared to be a woman, but a person was standing next to me urinating in the urinal, and I guess it was a male, but it was dressed like a woman. And I see those kinds of things, but to me, I got other things to worry about in my life. I got problems. My family, friends have problems. I'm busy. I don't think about those things. Tell me your personal journey, Callie. Did you begin as a man or a woman, or what is your personal journry like?
So I was assigned male at birth when I was born, meaning that I was born with what we traditionally call, male anatomy. But I've, pretty much my entire life not identified that way. And, I'm 31 now. I came out when I was 28 and began my, transition journey. And it's, it's an amazing thing, finally being able to be who you've always known yourself to be. And, as far as the bathroom thing, I couldn't agree with you more. We are just trying to live our lives. We're not a threat to anyone, and we're far more likely to be the victims of violence than the perpetrators of it.
So when you were like a teenage boy, did you feel as if you were like a woman trapped in a man's body? Did you feel like I don't know how a woman feels. How do women feel? How did you feel?
Well, it's a little tough to say because I've never felt any different. So, for me, it's two things really. It's, there's a physical discomfort with the way that my body is arranged, and then there's also the social discomfort. What we typically think of as female psychology, obviously not all women fit that stereotype, but kind of what we generally see with how women typically respond emotionally to things and how women socialize and those things always just made a lot more sense to me than the way that men are generally socialized. And then the physical discomfort on top of that is kind of what sealed it.
All right. So when you were a teenage boy, did you want to date girls?
Yes.
So even though you had male body parts, but you felt like a female, but you wanted to date girls.
Mm-hmm. And I still do.
All right, so if I would see you now, do you identify as a woman or a man?
I identify as female.
So you're female, but you have male body parts and you still want to date women.
Mm-hmm.
Would that make you a lesbian?
Yes.
So you're a lesbian, but you have male body parts.
Right.
Wow. So if I would see you on the city streets, so I would say there's a woman. You look like a woman.
I mean, I would hope so.
You want to look like a woman.
There's a broad spectrum of presentation, and the way that people present themselves, may or may not fit, stereotypical gender norms. I tend to dress pretty, what we would call girly, and I like dresses and skirts, and my nails are always painted and that kind of stuff. So, that's how I hope people see me.
And so, as far as the problems you have. Because you look like a woman, if I would see you look like a woman, but you got male body parts. So what discrimination do you face then? What happens?
Well, a part of it is employment. So I actually lost the job when I came out because my boss was convinced that my customers wouldn't accept me.
So you were employed as a male, mm-hmm. but you came out as a female, started dressing, act like a woman, and your boss said, we can't have that.
Basically, yeah.
All right, so you have a hard time getting work now, a job?
I don't. I'm very lucky that I work for a company who has a very strong anti-discrimination policy and means it, so that it's never been an issue for me there. I'm very fortunate in that way. If you talk to trans people generally, unemployment and underemployment is chronic in our community. So I'm one of the lucky ones, we'll put it that way.
What do you think? Let me give you my perspective on the bathroom trans bill, and that is I do not want the federal government telling Madeira Elementary or telling Simon Kenton Middle School who to admit into bathrooms and how to admit them, that this was a problem that should be handled by locals and not by the federal government. The federal government was never created by the Constitution to reach into the bathrooms of grade schools, middle schools, high schools, and colleges or companies and businesses and tell them what kind of placards to put on bathrooms. And to me, if a person's like you and I, we all begin as Halle Berry, and if you're male, you make it over Dwayne Johnson. Some people stop in the middle. Right. And you probably started going that direction, but, you didn't get to the 50-yard line. You're more like Halle Berry, but your body parts are like Dwayne Johnson. It is what it is. Live your life. But I don't want the federal government involved in those kinds of local decisions. Can you understand how a conservative like me is not against you at all? Whatever you got to deal with it. I hope you have a great, successful life. Anyone that would do violence to anyone for any reason is wrong. Every crime is motivated by hate. None are motivated by love. And if you get beat up because you're trans or because you have money or because you're white or black or female or male, it's all the same. It's a terrible thing. Don't do it. But as a conservative, I do not think that the federal government should come into Deer Park High School and tell Deer Park High School what kind of policies to have about using the bathroom. And the idea of as a grandfather, when I go to the mall with my little granddaughter and she goes into the ladies' bathroom, if I see two hairy-ass men going in behind her, I got a problem with that. And so can you understand this is not about you being trans. It's about me and the role of the federal government is expanding. Can you understand that?
Yeah, I can definitely sympathize with that. Obviously, you and I probably would disagree on, what we think the role of government is or should be. My response to that would simply be to look at the damage that anti-trans policies do to our youth. The attempted suicide rate among our youth is ridiculously high,
which is sad, which is bad.
And the reported reason is because of those kinds of things. So if a school district is saying, no, we don't accept you, we're going to force you into uncomfortable positions and make sure that you know you're not welcome here. In my mind, I think that is the federal government's job to respond to that. You and I may disagree there, but that's where, that's the reason that I think what has been done here is justified.
Well, Callie, in my view, which is the law, in 1972, because of the ERA was almost passed, they came up with a consolation prize. With 1972, the Civil Rights Act, Title IX, said that there can't be discrimination against women in all bunch of places, the workplace, education, that kind of stuff. And so there's no reflection in the statute about transsexuals at all. The statute was put in to bar discrimination against women, not discrimination against trans. And so, of course, liberals don't like the fact that the statutes don't exactly say what they want it to say. And so they changed the words around when no one ever voted on that. And so from my perspective, any discrimination against anybody for any reason other than their behavior is a mistake. Because if you act poorly, if you act up, if you're a bad employee, you should be let go, fired, whatever it is. But no one should suffer discrimination because of their race, their gender, whatever it is in life, trans, whatever that is, and all that stuff. I'm against it. On the other hand, I want to decide as a people collectively to pass laws that people like the president and the attorney general follow. And there's no federal law that deals with transsexuals, zero, zilch, nada. They expanded the current law to cover a situation that doesn't exist in the law. That's my problem with it.
Well, I hear that, but my question is, so what are we supposed to say to the people who are suffering and dying while we have this debate?
Well, I don't want anybody to suffer and die. If somebody's beaten up, whatever the reason is, or die, that's terrible. But whoever beat up a trans should be dealt with severely for beating somebody up.
And the problem is they're often not, though.
Well, I can't imagine prosecutors not prosecuting perpetrators of known victims. I mean, whatever the reason is, it doesn't make any difference what the reason is. I deal with the injury and not the status.
Well, right. But, I mean, I looked at all of the trans murders that happened last year, and I wasn't able to find one prosecution or conviction of those things that happened because, the people that these things generally happen to, it's not just because they're trans, it's people who are in the margins. So sex workers, people of color, people who live in extreme poverty, people who otherwise generally our justice system isn't very good to in the first place. So, in my mind, while we're having a very polite debate about what we should do about these problems, we have the reality of people suffering and dying because we're not doing anything. So in my mind, if we're having this polite debate but not getting anywhere, I mean, I'm looking at trying to keep people alive. This is not a matter of not simply a matter of, someone's access or someone feeling comfortable in a bathroom or in a restaurant. I mean, this is literally a matter of life and death. It really is that urgent.
Well, Callie, I'd like you to stay in touch with me, and if somebody has been victimized of a crime for whatever reason, including transsexualism, and some prosecutor will not prosecute because he has a bias against a woman or a man transsexual, that is a problem. Let's put a spotlight on it. I don't want anybody hurt, but I don't want some special we have all special categories about religion, race, religion. We got all these things. And whatever the motivation for the crime is, I deal with the victim and the injury, and not the motivation is always hate. If somebody beats me up because they want my watch, which isn't worth very much money, if they want my watch and they beat me up, I'm just as beaten up as if someone beats me up because I'm a male or a female or whatever. It doesn't make any difference, the status. What deals with is the injury. Can you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely hear that. But the other thing to consider, too, is the wildly disproportionate number of times this happens to certain types of people.
Well, and then we should prosecute the hell out of anyone who hurts anybody for any reason. And if transsexuals are beaten up disproportionately, would you tell me they are? There should be then disproportionate prosecutions of those people.
Yeah, and there's not.
All right, Callie Wright, what's your website, if any, if people need more information?
It's transwellness.org. Please reach out.
If you got the guts, why don't you come on again in about a month and give me more of an update?
Let's do it.
Callie, I will stay with you because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
I couldn't agree more.
Callie Wright, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's continue. Bill Cunningham, 700 WLW.